Let's shoot it up. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Sutton Impact Family Style. I'm Jason.
And I'm Bill. And I'll start off with our business moment. I have a question. I'm trying to figure out where men's tennis stands in the United States. So I'm watching Wimbledon, and of course we don't have anybody of any note, of any interest. You know, it's always Federer, it's always somebody, but it's not us. And I've noticed for the last 30 years, if we're not good at something, we don't care. And then I think about it a little bit more, and, you know, I'm looking at NCAA college tennis. And it makes no sense to me because, college athletics are not in really good shape. There's a lot of areas that you need to cut costs and do different things. And I'm looking at all these schools that have tennis teams, and more than 60 or 70% of the players are from out of the country. So I'm thinking, if you're going to go out of the country and spend money to recruit, to have a tennis team, why do you have a tennis team? It's an American college, American university. Why do you need a tennis team? If it's not a sport of interest, if it's not a sport where American student athletes want to participate, why do we have it?
Title IX? Even ever that the numbers?
No, I'm talking about men's tennis even.
Oh, yeah, but I'm just saying overall.
And I've had some great students that were varsity tennis players, and none of them were from the U.S.
Well,
I have a girl in my program now from Russia. I had a girl from Italy and France. I've had a guy from England. And just, it doesn't make any sense. If you got to go that far to recruit, spend all that money, why have it? If you've got problems with funding in college athletics, find something else. Start a lacrosse team, start a rowing team. Start, something at sand volleyball. Something that American kids want to play.
Yeah.
And I'm not begrudging the foreign athletes the opportunity to come here and play. I'm just saying, if you really have all these financial problems, and this is our business moment, why do you have them? You create them yourself.
I don't know.
And if the interest isn't there, why do you do it? So that's just where that's my take on it.
I did see a commercial with Andy. Is it Andy Roddick? Who was our American tennis player that was kind of famous recently? Our male tennis player. The one that married Brooklyn. It was him and Brooklyn Decker. They're a couple. It's either... Yeah. And they have a commercial for like a Hillshire Farms meat type company. But I guess she's as famous as he is, so I guess it makes somewhat sense. And she's kind of the star. Probably more famous, yeah. I was about to say she's probably way more famous. No, we were talking a little bit off air too. Like tennis, you got to have, if you're going to be good at tennis and compete moving forward, you have to have opportunity. And I don't think a lot of grade school, high school camp kids have opportunity to play tennis.
No, you've got to play. You got to have access to a court. So you're probably a member. And where are the courts? There's always public courts, but they're not very good repair.
No.
And so you're talking about a country club. So you're talking about, a fairly affluent sport.
It's a fairly affluent sport. I think, almost everyone that succeeds has private coaching. The only places I've ever seen it have been, like you said, I worked at that really, overly expensive summer camp where they had, parents visiting their kids in helicopters on Parents' Day. They had a tennis program.
Of course they did.
Yeah, because, again, and I've heard people, too, talk about how, if you're playing soccer, you're playing with a team and you have friends around. If you're playing basketball, football, all the other team sports, you've got all these people around you. Where they talk about how tennis is very isolating. A lot of it will just be you with the balls machine shooting balls at you, or you and a private tennis coach. Like, it's not a lot
or
of...
you and a private coach, yeah.
Or you and a private coach. And obviously you're going to be playing people from time to time and sparring, if you will. But that it's much more of a, an isolating, less social sort of event as well. Besides, obviously, the economic factors that push us away and everything else. I've never really watched... I don't think I've ever watched an entire tennis match. But I did play...
I did when McEnroe and Jimmy Connors were playing, but that's 30 years ago, almost 40 years ago.
Well, I know this is not real tennis, obviously, but I recently picked up the new Mario Tennis, and it's selling very well, so people enjoy video game tennis at the very least. Although that is Mario Tennis.
Is it like Pong?
No, it's honestly more like a fighting game with tennis involved. Because you've got specialty shots and, you get power-ups and you can break the other person's racket if you get your power up at the right point. But...
full contact tennis.
But again, like I said, it's Mario Tennis, so it's got some. But I mean, it translates well to a video game. But again, the video game, you're going online, you're playing against people, you're setting up in your living room, and you've got the Wiimotes and or I guess sorry, the Joy Cons now. We don't have Wiimotes anymore, and you're bashing it back and forth. So it's a little bit different. And obviously, it's video games and not actual tennis. But there's no spark for that either. But what can you do? So with that, why don't we roll into my somewhat business moment?
Okay.
I'm going to talk MMA of all things. Now, did you watch the heavyweight fight where Cormier knocked the guy out the other night? Probably not.
I did not.
Well, when that was over, a certain fighter who's very famous, most recently for being a WWE champion, and he is the current wrestling champion, Brock Lesnar, was in the front row. After the guy won, Brock Lesnar was able to get up past security. I mean, he's obviously a big, giant man, but still, walk into the ring, and then basically, despite the fact that he hasn't won a fight in 8 years, I think, in the MMA, challenged the heavyweight champion to a fight in the ring. And it came off as a very WWE... I mean, he's obviously a WWE guy, and it came off as a very WWE-like move, Like, he shows up late just for the heavyweight fight. He's sitting in the front row. He's able to walk into the cage right after the other guy wins and challenge him to a fight and talk junk. And it felt very much like a Vince McMahon stage sort of promo. And, we recently had the failures of CM Punk, another WWE superstar who was a 38-year-old man who had a ton of injuries and had never had a professional fight. And he got paid millions of dollars to fight in the MMA after being, and again, I've always been a big wrestling fan, professional wrestling, sports entertainment, whatever you want to call it. And those guys are incredibly athletic, and they do put their bodies in a lot of weight. But at the same time, not a real fight. But it sort of begs the question of, like, where, as big as the MMA was a couple years ago, now that they're having to pull these sort of stunts. And I'm not saying that Dana White had anything to do with the Brock Lesnar thing, although it felt very set up, And you have all these guys in the heavyweight division that should be in line for that title fight. There's a couple guys that have won like 5 fights in a row, and they've been making a lot of noise. And here's the literal WWE wrestling champion who hasn't had a professional fight in 8 years, and but he's the payday, right?
He's a payday, and payday talks.
And again, if it was, and I'm probably not even saying his name right, that's a little bit of pay attention to the MMA, but if it was Cormier versus Jones, and he's the guy that won 5 of his last fights, I probably wouldn't even check the results. If Brock Lesnar is fighting as a non-MMA follower, I'm going to go to YouTube, I'm going to watch those results. If I'm somewhere the fight's on, I'm going to be interested in watching it. But what does that say about where the MMA is at right now as a business? If they're having to, drag out 40-year-old WWE superstars to get people to get eyeballs on their fights. Not that I know they have a big fan base, and I don't want to discredit any of the actual. I know they have a very strong group of people, but it seems like where it was 5 years ago, where it seemed like it was building and building and building, and now they're stuck with stunts. What can they do at this point, do you think?
Well, I mean, if it's overexposure, when it wasn't, when it was just starting off, it was rare. You had to go look for it, right?
Right.
It didn't come, wasn't every month or wasn't whatever it is. And again, once you oversaturate, it takes the uniqueness away, and then you have to game it up. You have to figure out ways to attract people and try to do things a little bit differently. So, yeah, it's just different.
Now, obviously,
it's not healthy. I mean, you got to keep people wanting and keep them interested, keep them curious.
Now, I spent a little time in the cage when I trained with the vets at the combat club.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing I noticed, even with, the guys there that had been former MMA trainers, and I was wondering if this is part of MMA's problem, is that everybody loses. Like, the best fighters still lose. They still get trapped in an armbar. So you don't really ever get, it's rare that you get a heavyweight champion that goes like 3 years without losing. You got, some sort of 12-0 just monster. Like, you think back to boxing, and it's like when boxing is big, you need the unstoppable champion. You need the Mike Tyson who's 19-0 knocking everybody out. How much you think of MMA's problem is the fact that you never really get I mean, you occasionally get your anomalies, your loudmouth Conor McGregor's, who obviously has a lot of success in the ring and outside of it, but that they don't have anybody that just looks like this. Anytime somebody seems unbeatable, they get beat. And like I said,
That's a different thing, right?
From the couple years that I studied, everybody basically said that everybody is beatable. Like Brock Lesnar, when he did fight in MMA 15 years ago, when he was unstoppable for like 4 times. As big and powerful as he is, he's still susceptible to, his arm ends up in the wrong place and all of a sudden he's got to tap out. So,
yeah.
And at this point, if you are Dana White, I mean, at some point you have to manufacture that to try and save your business. Because, I mean, there's not going to be that many former WWE or, NFL players you could probably stick in the ring to get a big payday.
Unless The Rock came back.
Unless The Rock came back, but The Rock is too Hollywood. He's too smart to ever get into a ring like that. And I don't think he's ever I do think that, to their credit, from everything I've seen and read, both CM Punk and Brock Lesnar really do love MMA. Like, that is their love. It's just a matter of how good they are. But, I mean, if you watch the clip, it feels like a very staged wrestling promo. I mean, outside of, Brock Lesnar having, like a weird name, like the Giant or something. But
yeah, I mean, you saw where boxing was, and then boxing's kind of fallen off the map. And then MMA came in strong and really pushed boxing off the map. And now what's next? What's going to come back up?
Because you look at the last 2 big paydays in that sport, and it was Floyd Mayweather in the little boxing Conor McGregor match, right? Which, again, was kind of a stunt. And then the CM Punk, his first fight, was a really big deal. And again, it was, here's a WWE wrestler coming to, our sport. And I'm sure if Brock Lesnar does fight for the heavyweight championship in the next 6 months, it'll be one of the biggest selling pay-per-views because people want to see it. But again, I don't think it helps that their sport is now stuck to, they're just stunt casting is what they're basically stuck at. Which is kind of sad.
Because everybody wants to see the Ant-Man and the Wasp now.
Apparently.
So that's where we are. Maybe the rise of superheroes in Marvel is also playing into this. Because you can see all these amazing fights all you want that are just computer generated. I don't know.
I don't know either.
Anyways, we're talking about baseball all-star game, but not the traditional all-star selections. I'm more interested in that last battle for the last spot.
Okay.
Okay? So here's who's up for the American League. Benintendi from Boston, Rosario from Minnesota, Segura from Seattle, Simmons from California, from the Angels, who's really good, and Giancarlo Stanton. So that's a pretty interesting vote-off. I would imagine it'll come down to Stanton and Simmons.
Who's the Red Sox?
That he could be in there too. Then in the National League side, it's Aguilar from Milwaukee, Belt from San Francisco, Carpenter from St. Louis, and St. Louis people will stuff the ballot boxes.
Oh, yeah.
Muncy from the Dodgers, who's got 20 home runs, and Turner from Washington. So I'm thinking it's going to be Muncy.
Because the Dodgers?
Because he just caught everybody by surprise, and he's been very, very interesting.
Well,
but I think that's more exciting than the other thing, just to see who's going to get in for that last couple.
Yeah, because Muncy's the fastest Dodger in history to hit 20 home runs. I know that.
Yep.
Which is pretty exciting.
And so your Pirate representative is Felipe Vasquez, formerly Felipe Rivero, the closer.
Yeah.
And that's what everybody wants, a closer from a next to last place team. So I don't know how that's going to go.
Well, they can keep him on the team till the All-Star break and then trade him along with Cervelli and everybody else for our Pirate minute.
I'm hoping at the training deadline they dump half the team.
They need to. They really
need to blow it up and start over again.
Sadly. They are one of those franchises now, though, where, like, it's been so long of dumping and starting and dumping and starting and dumping and starting. And I know they had the year with McCutchen, a couple of those years where they went to the playoffs, but it just feels like...
They had 3 years in a row where they made the playoffs.
Yeah.
But lost, 1 year they won the wild card, 2 years they lost the wild card.
Yeah. But it feels like...
So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, if you're on the outside looking in as a Pirate fan, it's like, do I want to sign up for another year of this? Another rebuild,
Yeah, Well, let's switch and talk about the World Cup.
Okay.
So we're down to the last 4 teams. I figured, Jace, we got to give people our predictions and why we're predicting.
Yes.
So we have France and Belgium. I hate the French, so I'm rooting for Belgium.
Because of waffles and chocolate?
A great reason. And in fact, I hate the French.
I see.
Then I've got England and Croatia. And I'm going to root for England because I've had some great students from England, and I've got my good friend Dr. Mullen, and it would make his lifetime for them to win the World Cup. So I can root for England and Belgium, and then I'm going to root for England to win it all.
I see.
Probably not going to happen, but those are my predictions. So I'm predicting England and Belgium, and then England winning it all. What do you got?
Well, I was leaning towards Croatia, but now that I think about it, most of my favorite bands and television shows come from the UK, which would push me towards England. And I think England also has a little bit of that Washington Capitals thing going for it, where it had all that bad karma or juju, whatever you want to call it, about never winning a shootout and never advancing. And I feel like now they've got a little bit of that Washington Capitals. We beat the Penguins. Now we can just sort of fly. So based on music and TV and entertainment and an enjoyable accent, I've got to go with England in that side. And unlike you, I don't hate the French. I like the French quite a bit.
Okay.
I was listening to a French band earlier today, and I've liked a lot of French movies, more so than Belgium. Although I do love chocolate, but French has nice pastries as well. So I'm going to go with France. So go England, France, a nice classic. And then based on, again, whether or not it should be or shouldn't be, based on film and television and music, I've got to go for England. Plus, like you, I think I know more people from England that would be quite happy. I work with a bunch of English people, and they would go nuts. So I think that makes it, yeah.
And there you have it. There you have it. Soccer, World Cup football, World Cup soccer fans. We did talk about the World Cup on our show, and we made our predictions.
Yes.
So
Yes,
now we're done.
Very true. And now we'll talk about a sport that we probably get accused of talking about far too often, but Summer League is happening right now in the NBA. And it's been kind of interesting.
I watched Phoenix and Sacramento last night, and I was very impressed with Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
I like the young Phoenix team. Ayton, who I didn't see play really well in the NCAA tournament, looking pretty good as an NBA player. Like Mikal Bridges a lot. Like the fact they signed Devin Booker. So Phoenix is probably going to get my vote for most improved team already going into next year.
Now, the other big, the number 2 pick was also in that game you watched. What did you think of him? Mr. Bagley.
Not physical enough.
And he's a big...
He needs to develop. He needs to develop. He needs to build up his body.
I also noticed...
He needs more.
Now, I know he didn't have a very good surrounding cast because it's Sacramento and they don't have good players on their regular roster, let alone on their, Summer League team. But he doesn't seem like he's capable of doing anything on his own. Like, it seemed like he was settling for, weird fadeaway. Like, he can't really do much with the ball. Like, he's not going to get his own bucket. And obviously, if he's playing with good players, they can get him in positions where he could do stuff with it. But that's one thing I noticed about him as far as that sort of stuff goes. Now, the number 3 pick in the draft is technically Doncic, but he was traded for the number 5 pick, which sort of made Trae Young the number 3 pick. And despite kind of recovering in that last game, he's looked pretty terrible.
I've never seen anybody shoot that many air balls.
No, and that's the thing. I know, as people have pointed out, he is a marquee player. So if you're a Summer League guy busting your butt to try either make an NBA roster, an NBA DL roster, or even get some European love, he's somebody you can show up on, Because he's going to be on all the highlights. So if you look good against him, it's going to help you. And not that everybody isn't trying hard against everybody, but, it's like when you play the Patriots or the Steelers or a good team in the NFL, it's like your chance to really show out. But he looks really small. I think when everybody is a great athlete, all of a sudden, he doesn't look very quick. He doesn't look very fast. I'd be worried if I was the Hawks.
Again, I don't think he's physically strong enough to compete. He's going to get knocked around pretty well. And you said about Steph Curry, but this guy was missing. His air balls were 2-3 feet short.
Oh, yeah.
I was not impressed at all. So I don't know.
And he's not a long player either.
I know he came out a house of fire in November, December, and January, but it's also when Oklahoma was playing some pretty weak competition.
Yes,
And
indeed.
as the season got on and on and on and on, he tapered off. His points went down. His shooting percentage went down. So I don't know. I'm skeptical.
And again, he's got a really short wingspan, which I know that sounds like a Jay Billis Woj kind of situation, but it is important length in this situation. Back to the Bridges thing, because Bridges looks really good, but Zaire Smith, who he was traded for with the Philadelphia trade when they broke his mother's heart, they both look really good. So that might be. I mean, we'll see what happens with the other pick. Obviously, is what will set that trade apart. But it looks like both teams may have got the right player for their team. Because Zaire Smith looks pretty awesome.
I like Bridges. Like a 4-year player, played for Villanova. I like him a lot. I thought that was a really good trade for Phoenix, and so we'll see where it goes.
And I think with Phoenix, the young team, like getting a 4-year player probably helps them out quite a bit as well. I guess because we have to talk about them from time to time, I thought that Jonathan Isaac looks like he spent some time in the gym this year. Looked a little bit better for the Magic. Looks like he's a player with some promise. And Bamba looked pretty decent, I thought. Not great by any stretch, but he didn't look afraid to be out there, and he knocked down an outside shot or two. So, Magic fans.
Here's the trade rumor.
Oh, that trade happened.
That trade happened.
Yeah.
So Timothy Mozgov is now with the Magic.
He is, and Jeremy Grant, the Chicago Bulls guard, is now with the Magic. So they traded 2 terrible years of Biyombo for 2 slightly less terrible years of Mozgov. But you save a little bit of money for 2 guys that aren't going to play. And again, that signing, it's still an unjustified. That signing is ridiculous. But speaking of ridiculous signings, we can move right into the Carmelo sweepstakes now that he's going to be a free agent. Because you saw what that if he had stayed on the Oklahoma City Thunder, they would pay a $300 million salary this year.
Yep.
And if they cut him,
and luxury tax. Yep.
Yeah, and if they stretch him, they save
$103 million by cutting him or extending him. I guess is the proper term.
Yes. And while he made it clear he would not play a diminished role for the Thunder this year. If he joins his friends...
Which is funny from somebody that's diminished over the last 2 years.
Diminished severely.
The role he plays is diminished because his skills are diminished.
But if he goes to Houston, where he would have to play a diminished role, supposedly he wants to play either with his friend Chris Paul or his other banana boat buddy LeBron James in L.A. Now, the Lakers, he could go to the Lakers because that team, I don't know what the hell they're doing with their signings. With Lance Stevenson and, JaVale McGee. So I'm sure he'd fit right in LA.
They're getting a lot of one-and-done contracts, so they go after somebody else next year and make their run.
Oh, I know that. It seems like some of the guys they brought in for those one-and-dones, they could have got much later in free agency. I don't think anyone was banging Lance Stevenson's door.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, though, I think that this is still a roster in flux. They still got 90 days. We'll see where it turns out.
Definitely. And then just because it's slightly exciting right now, I'm going to give you my New York Knicks minute. First, the most exciting news of all is the rumblings that he might sell the team. You heard that, right? That Dolan is that's on the table. Which is a Knicks fan, that'd be the most exciting news in the history of Knicks news because he's one. Again, I feel weird about him because he does spend money. He just spends it really.
Money. He just doesn't know how to spend money.
He just doesn't know how to spend it, or he doesn't know how to hire. He never brings in the right people, so. But I can't fault him as being a cheap owner. But between that news and the fact that Kevin Knox looks like a stud, and again, I realize it's a couple games in Summer League, but he looks phenomenal. For a 19-year-old kid, he put up 20, 10, and 5.
Knicks fans need some good news.
Yeah. And again, they're going to be bad again this year, and they actually have their pick, assuming they don't do anything stupid. I mean, if Porzingis is able to come back, that's something,
Yeah.
Especially with, there's still the one-and-done contracts. And, there's always rumblings about, the Knicks are the Knicks. If they got a new owner and the right coach, they're going to attract players,
No doubt. Because they're playing in New York, and they're right in the meeting. They play in the best arena. Well, the world's most famous arena.
Right.
But the world's most famous arena.
And if Frankie Nicotine and, Knox develop.
You're playing in front of a sold-out crowd every night.
In one of the greatest cities in the world. So, expensive city, but an amazing city. And then I guess, to bring it back to France real quick, you saw that we have an end of an era in San Antonio now, right? Tony Parker,
Tony Parker goes to Charlotte,
which is just, I don't know. It's a weird move.
I'm not surprised that San Antonio decided not to sign him.
No.
I'm shocked that Charlotte decided to sign him for 2 years and $10 million.
Because what are you doing if you're Charlotte?
You just bought a backup point guard.
Right, and your backup point guard, assuming that Kemba Walker's still on that team too. But Tony Parker can help you win a couple games. And if you're Charlotte, you're not looking to win a couple games. Like, I figure if you're maybe Thibodeau in Minnesota, you look at him as a nice backup to come in and help your team. Or depending on how the money...
already have.
Right. But, I mean, you figure if you're a contender, Parker's got a lot of playoff experience. He could probably come give you, a solid 10, 15 minutes off the bench every night, right? Where you're not going to lose,
I would have thought it would make more sense for Milwaukee to sign.
Milwaukee would have been a great spot. Because then you get somebody on that team with championship experience and somebody that could run the point, and they desperately need that. Because they just signed Brook Lopez. So that's their big free agent signing. But like you said, like in Milwaukee, even if they had money, like you bring him in and let him run the offense when Ben Simmons is off the floor. Bring him into Philadelphia. Like somewhere where you think you're going to win, and you just need a veteran presence to,
Yeah, Philadelphia would have been another nice landing spot for him.
Let him help some young guys. Let him give a few spell. Explain, let them understand playoffs. See how hard you have to work. I think that would have been a great fit, but what can you do?
And then the Kawhi sweepstakes is still wide open.
Again, I think unless you can get him for a song, and they're not going to sell him for a song, I'm not giving up anything for him. Because it seems like he knows where he wants to go. I did find it interesting, though, where's the talk coming from that he doesn't want to play with LeBron? That he wants to own, now he wants to go to the Clippers.
I have no idea. I don't know if I believe that came from him, or if it's posturing, I don't know. But, Clippers don't have anything to give San Antonio for him either.
Absolutely nothing. Unless you like Lou Williams and two of those new guards they drafted this year. Yeah, this is not a team you'd want to... I just don't understand. Because even if you're Kawhi Leonard and you want to be the man, you've already been the man. You're a finals MVP, you've won its ring, and you've seen what you're going up against. You're going against superstar teams. You need another guy with you. You can't do it alone. And who better than LeBron and the Lakers, And probably in 2 years, you're the lead dog and he's your second,
Yeah. I'm surprised Marcus Smart hasn't gotten a contract.
He seems very hurt about it right now.
I know, but I'm very surprised. So I'm holding out hope that he ends up back with the Thunder.
With Boston,
back in Oklahoma.
Well, Smart's from...
So I would love to see that. That's what I'm rooting for.
Oh, back in Oklahoma because he went to Oklahoma State. Yeah, it's like we paid him. I don't think the Thunder can afford him. I mean, I know they're saving $100 million, but I don't think they're looking to spend another dime.
No, I don't think so either.
He's in a weird position where what he does is fantastic, but he's a liability shooting the ball. And I don't think you want him unless you're a contender. Like if you're a young team. I mean, you could argue
they're trying to figure out everything.
Yeah, you could argue you want his tenacity and you want him to show young guys how hard to play. But you'd also worry about him being on a team where he got to be the alpha and he's running around shooting shots, crazy shots everywhere too. So I think he's a hard player to to do with. I don't know what you do with him,
Yeah.
I think that's probably about sports talk. You have a food moment for us, right?
I do. I went to a new place that just opened up in Winter Park in Orlando called Gelato Go. And the wife is from Rome and the husband is from Venezuela. They make all the gelato in-house. And it was absolutely amazing. It was some of the best gelato, definitely the best gelato I've had in the United States.
Wow.
And it was as good as gelato in Italy, but it should because, they're making it fresh in the store.
Right.
So they're not moving it around, and it's not that, that fluff-up stuff that you see in the mall. It looks, all fancy and ribbony.
Yeah.
This stuff is really good. This is legit.
It's good to see. I sadly did not have a food moment. I had good food, but I've been to places I've talked about, I think, at least twice on this network, so I wouldn't bother.
Yeah, that's really good food. I went to the Coop, which is a Four Rivers derivative, and I'd gone before and was not all that impressed. And this time I left thinking, you know what? It's just not all that. It's not as good as what you'd expect out of the Four Rivers brand.
No, I had gone there once myself.
I won't be back. Probably the best. I had BurgerFi. I love BurgerFi. BurgerFi is always solid. But the gelato would be my food moment.
And you saw that BurgerFi is at USF now.
I love BurgerFi.
They put up a sign on campus, apparently.
They put up a sign about what?
BurgerFi at USF.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I got to check that out.
I mean, it's not up yet, but the sign is up for, future location kind of thing. So that's exciting. Holly told me it's on the way to her class. So I don't know exactly where that is. But she said she saw it. So
I won't be leaving campus for lunch anymore.
I know, there's no need now.
No. BurgerFi special.
And as far as my entertainment this week, I've really been enjoying an old show, Veronica Mars, which is an amazing show. Everybody should watch it. It's very funny. Kristen Bell. It's wonderful. And then I watched a bunch of mediocre movies like Truth or Dare and Super Troopers 2. So, sorry, I don't really have a lot of recommendations unless you want to go back and watch Veronica Mars again. Very old show. So, there's that.
Well, I'm headed to Columbus for the AAA All-Star game. And definitely we'll be having some ice cream at Graders and trying out a couple new places. And I'll make those my food moments for next week.
Nice. And I will try to go somewhere new in Louisiana sometime this week, so I have a food moment. I should be doing that far more often than I am anyway. So.
Oh, here's something people enjoy. So I'm 67 years old. I'm playing 16 over softball this weekend, and I got ejected.
For what?
So we were playing, and a guy hit a ball, and hit pretty well, but there was a tree hanging in over the fence, and it hit the limb and dropped straight down, so it didn't go out of the ballpark. And it should have either been a ground rule double or it should have been whatever you can get after it hits the tree. And the umpire said, in his opinion, if the tree wasn't there, it would have been a home run. And I said, that's a shitty call. And he looked at me and said, did you say that's a shitty call? And I said, yes. I said, that was a shitty call. And he said, you're out here.
Wow, that's pretty tame for a throwout.
I thought so. And I wasn't yelling at him. I was just matter of factly. He said, did you say it was a shitty call? And I said, yes. I said, it's a shitty call.
That seems like a perfect ground rule double situation.
I know. But he wouldn't leave. He wouldn't go out and look at the tree. He wouldn't do anything. He had an attitude about him, and I just decided, okay.
What can you do?
Nothing you can do. So I've been trying to think of the last time I was ejected from a softball game. And it seems like it was a long time ago, so I can't even remember. But all I know is if I would have been ejected 20 years ago, it would have been a lot wilder than the ejection I had today.
Of course.
This was pretty mild today.
Yes, I would say that's very mild, especially given your history of ejections.
Well, I'm going to go look for something to download for my iPad to watch on the plane.
I don't know if it's live yet, but that Chappaquidda movie, I'm going to watch that this week, so it looks interesting.
I still can't believe they made that movie.
Well, I'm glad they did. I want to see what happens. Or see what this interpretation of it is.
I remember, it's sad to say this because it's talking ill of the dead, but there used to be a joke, and they say, if you don't watch yourself, my uncle's Ted Kenny and I'll have to drive you home. So.
Well, The Simpsons has referenced many of the Kennedys different with the Quimby family. They've referenced many of their, the Quimby compound and the things that happen on the Quimby compound. So,
yeah,
it's part of the lexicon, the culture, all that sort of stuff. So,
I guess. All right. Well, I look forward to our show next week.
Yes, indeed.
Stuff from Columbus.
And again, please subscribe, please rate, please become a family member on Patreon. We'd love to hear from you, and please, definitely email, text us, Twitter us, give us some questions, especially with these next couple of slower weeks. We need some stuff to talk about. So until next week.
Yes, until football starts.
All right. Thank you.
For all our World Cup predictions, I wouldn't bet on them, though.
No.